Good evening, Canada. And of course, lawyers hired by whatever Muslim Brotherhood front group who are paid to watch this to sue me in the past, present, or future. This is Uninterrupted, your favorite show where you're either making money to watch this because you're suing me, or you're just being mildly entertained by the week's news. We have a lot to get to. All right, and top story will be new authoritarian super lockdown curfew in Quebec. We got a double secret extra lockdown in Ontario. What's the difference between this and the last one? Who knows, but Doug Ford's very serious. He's like an 800-pound gorilla, folks. I've been joking for a while that Omar Al-Ghabra is Minister of Muslim Brotherhood Infiltration or Affairs in Canada. Well, now he's actually in cabinet. Yay, we actually have a member of the Muslim Brotherhood in Canada's cabinet. I'm so excited. For so long, they've been just on the periphery of cabinet. We've had a couple of Khalistani ministers, but now we actually have an Islamist Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas-supporting member of cabinet in Canada. Woo. Okay, so we're all very excited. Erin O'Toole takes a direct stand against his arch enemy, the Conservative base. Is there going to be a civil war in the U.S.? We'll talk about that. Special visas for Chinese people. Meng Wanzhou's family gets a special visa to come visit Meng Wanzhou. Two Michaels still locked up in China. And then some good news. There is a real peace between Israel and the UAE. So we'll end the show on just, something nice to go into the weekend for. All right. Top story tonight. Quebec, curfews. Ontario, lockdowns. I've talked a lot about them, but I want to throw on the suit and talk about them in the fancy place because, that's what we need to do. Quebec has instituted full-on curfews because all the scientific data shows, listen, you must obey the science. Science is so paramount. We love science. Science is the greatest. There are 8 million genders. Science, science, science. So science has told us, although there are no actual studies you can find, let me just, still no science actually showing that the coronavirus doesn't exist between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. and only can be transmitted from 8 p.m. to 6:59 a.m. Listen, there's no way they would institute this type of lockdown on us if it wasn't science, okay? So it's the most science that you could ever science, okay? Now, unthankfully, Quebec has actually given us their reasoning behind this lockdown, and it's not science. Francois Legault, all credit to him. He didn't BS us with, the science says you must go in. He's like, no. The reason we're instituting curfews is for shock behavioral therapy. Yes, the government must perform massive behavioral therapy on the Quebec population. Now, anyone who's said that the government is using these lockdowns as means to just pacify us so they can take away our civil rights at a later date has been called a conspiracy theorist. Just like the Great Reset conspiracy theorists that you guys all are, despite the fact that we can actually see the World Economic Forum plan for the Great Reset, and the government of Canada actively saying, that's our plan, it's the Great Reset. We're going to build back better. No, these conspiracy theorists have been so conspiratorial, so unhinged and untouched from reality that Quebec just flat out said, no. The purpose of this lockdown is shock behavioral therapy. Let's break that one down. Okay. So this is a massive sort of civil rights thing that we have to sort of talk about, like, can you form an individual? And this is like doctors like saying, okay, this person is a danger to themselves and society, so they need to be sort of institutionalized. Now we have that, and it's still a very, very difficult thing to do. There are a lot of legal complications, and it kind of makes sense, right? If someone is in the deep throes of psychosis, and they think the government and everyone's out to get them, and they can't distinguish between, a 16-year-old girl and a CIA operative, and they're violent, yes, you need to sort of institutionalize them at that point. And we have a lot of checks and balances there. Where there seems to be no checks and balances is, performing entire behavioral therapy, shock behavioral therapy at that, upon the Quebec population. So just break that down. The point is shock behavioral therapy. So the point is to shock the Quebec population, like basically, I guess, bully them or do something so outlandish that you can change the population's behavior. There's a Charter of Rights and Freedoms, there's a Constitution. It's supposed to prevent all of this. And when I was saying from the beginning, like when the CIQ, it's like, oh, yes, they're not liberal, but they're also not conservative. They were never a conservative government. They were just a French government. And here's my problem with Quebec. Quebec would probably riot and there probably would be violent, bloody uprising if the Premier of Quebec said, you know what, we're going to speak 10% more English in schools. You know what, we're going to have some schools that don't have to speak French all the time. We're going to allow English language schools. There's just something about, less French, more English. He would die. He would be dragged up by a mob and murdered. But, take away all your civil rights, and as long as you do it in French, well then, sacre bleu, bibliothèque, je suis pamplemousse, chapeau à la tête. Whoopee. Whoopee, just let it happen. And then, I don't believe when the CBC, I watch the CBC, and I've had to cut back on the CBC episodes this week because, every time I watch the CBC, I'm like, get me, I'm going insurrecting. But, the CBC will show people and show like, oh, I think it is a good thing to maybe, I guess we have to, blah, 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 blah. And I don't think that presents the majority. I think what the CBC does is they find a bunch of people who are willing to sort of go along with the government narrative. So if they interview 50 people, they'll get like 15 of them with the government narrative, a bunch in the middle. And then what they'll do is they'll take one sort of tepid, I'm kind of worried, meh, and then put in 7 like, no. Civil rights are bad. We need a lot less of them. We need less civil rights, a lot less civil rights. If anything, Quebec has too many civil rights right now. Pamplemousse. I speak a lot of French. Shout out to my middle school French teacher who did not do a good job with me. To be fair, I was not the greatest student there. Bibliothèque. So that's Quebec, where they just basically said, we're instituting curfews. You can't go outside. You can literally not go outside your house. What do we do with the homeless? Homelessness now illegal? I don't know. Who knows? And in Ontario, we're entering into like double secret probation or double secret lockdown now. That's kind of like, it's like, what's the difference? Like, what's the difference between like this emergency stay-at-home order and the last one? But now it's like a state of emergency. And Doug, folks, if you've seen the modeling, you'll fall off your chair. I have to say this every time. Modeling is not affected by what you do today. Modeling is affected by what you did a month and a half ago. So the modeling right now is sort of projecting on the path of everyone going to visit their family this weekend for Christmas. Now, as you might be aware, you might be Christian, you might not be Christian, but most of you know that Christmas was on December 25th. And a lot of you know that is in the past. It is not coming up as we're in January now. It means we have another year before the next Christmas. So no one's going to visit their family for Christmas this weekend because there is no Christmas. Wow, I solved it. I cracked the case. Get me a government job for $600,000 a year. Now, Doug Ford has looked at the modeling, and I don't believe for a second that there's someone who can't explain this to him. I don't believe it, right? I don't think Doug Ford's a genius. I don't think he's all that smart. I don't think he's as dumb as his harshest critics put him out to be. But I think he's the type of man that if you can explain things to him, well, actually, no, I do know radical Islam has been explained to him, and he's basically rejected it straight out. But he's the type of person, if you can explain, like, this is actually how modeling works. Now, I have heard from MPPs who are about 75% as clueless as Doug Ford, that the doctors and the medical experts are basically liberals, and what they're doing is they're sort of hedging or leveraging against Doug Ford. They're basically saying, if you don't do what we say, we're going to say you're murdering people. That's what essentially is going on. So Doug Ford is doing the most classic Doug Ford thing, and this is actually the best example of the modern Conservative Party in Canada. He's not doing 100% of what the Liberals want, right? We're still allowed outside of our homes to walk our dogs, but he's doing like 90 to 95% of what the Liberals want. So in a sense, he's alienating his entire base because he's going 95% towards the Liberals, but then he's having like these few insane supporters be like, yeah, but if we didn't have Doug Ford, and if it was Angela Horwath or Stephen Del Duca or Kathleen Wynne, we'd have no civil rights. So at least it's better than nothing. And like, yes, true, but what's the point of having a Conservative Party if it's 95% the Liberal Party? Doug Ford, he didn't realize this, and he could actually maintain his base if he had sort of stood up to the blackmail, pushed back and said, you know what, here's what we're going to do. You're going to put in some reasonable restrictions, okay? We're going to be very reasonable. We're going to trust that everyone is reasonable, and we're not going to shut down small businesses. But like every other politician, whoever has the lobbying power, curse you strategies, curse you. Sorry for that. They get to decide what's open, what's not open, who goes where, who goes what. So this is why big box stores, and if the big box stores don't follow the rules, I'm going to come on down on them like an 800-pound gorilla. And come on, like, they only have to be at 50% capacity, and we're going to reduce their hours. Okay. This is why I hate modeling, okay? Because the computer things don't take into effect such obvious things. Okay, so if you say, like, okay, the first problem is, if you shut down the hours of operation, okay, so let's say things are only allowed to run between 8 and 8 right now, right? But before, things were 24 hours. A lot of people wanted to avoid crowds, so what they would do is, they'd go shop at 9 or 10 p.m. when the stores were at lower capacity, right? You've now taken out the people who want to shop at low capacity times. You've now pushed them into the high capacity times. So these stores are going to be even more crowded. But then what they've done is, they've taped off certain sections that don't sell essential goods. So good. So now another 50% of the store is closed. So you've reduced the surface area. So let's say this is the entire box store here that people could go in, right? You've now said, okay, now here's the area they can go in. So you've condensed them even further. Well, now you've said, okay, this is a problem. So we're going to actually now reduce capacity allowed in stores. So things can only be at 50% capacity. Ha-ha, we win. Except people are going to be lining up outside all in a row. You think people are going to just do that during the winter, all lined up outside? Now you still have a high density thing. It's granted it's better outside than inside, but you haven't actually solved any of these problems. And again, the modeling, come on, the models are always wrong. Every economics model, economists, okay, this is the same thing as the climate models. Climate models are based off economic modeling data, okay? And economic modeling data, according to economics, shouldn't be taken as absolute truth. Like, they use these sort of helpful kind of predictors, but every economist doesn't take economic modeling data as gospel when it comes to the economy. Yet, when we take the economic modeling data and we apply it to something else, like climate science or the coronavirus, all of a sudden it becomes the most infallible gospel you've ever seen. It is the word of Jesus and Muhammad put together, kissed by the Lord Buddha, and put out there, the immutable word of every single God in the world. Climate data, it drives me crazy. And it used to be a conspiracy theory that this was shock, that it was a shock behavioral therapy to sort of turn Canadians and Americans into submissive pawns that will just do whatever the government wants. But it is no longer, a conspiracy. That's actually what the Quebec government said. Now, I don't want to give a good on Doug Ford. Like, yay, Doug Ford, we're still allowed outside of our house. Woo! Oh my God, bless him. But, meh. Get me off this planet. Okay, so let's move off of that topic before I go absolutely insane and take me to another topic that's going to drive me absolutely insane. So, Canada has a new Minister of Transportation, and it is Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood. No, just kidding, he died a while ago. It would be, but we have the next best thing, Omar al-Ghabra. So, I'm going to show you this article, this is from 2015. This is an article, I believe, from Israel. And this article says, Trudeau's foreign minister secretary is pro-Hamas. He was. So this is an article about Omar al-Ghabra headed radical group that ran afoul of state Hamas support. He slammed brutal occupation and lauded Arafat. So we'll just read some of this article for a bit. And this is about Omar al-Ghabra, who is now a cabinet minister. Yay! Yay, 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 yay. Newly elected Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, or Justinder Trudinder, depending on what outfit he's wearing. I'll give credit to Ben Pankus for that joke. Raised eyebrows Wednesday when he was appointed Omar al-Ghabra's parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So he wasn't a minister yet; he was just parliamentary undersecretary for a while. He's one of the big movers and shakers in the Liberal government, and also in all the wide systemic corruption in Canada as well. Al-Ghabra, a Liberal MP representing Mississauga Centre, Mississauga, shocking that they would produce a Muslim Brotherhood candidate. I'm not shocked. Will get $16,600 raise from his normal salary, blah, blah, blah. Born in Saudi Arabia, Al-Ghabra is the son of Syrian parents and arrived in Canada back in 1989 with at least some of his nuclear family still living in the Middle East. The appointment of the new parliamentary secretary is particularly concerning to some, given that Al-Ghabra was previously the head of the radical Canadian Arab Federation between 2004 and 2005. So here's backing Hamas, comparing Israel to Nazis. CAF, just this August, lost an appeal to have its government funding reinstated After the Citizenship and Immigration Minister, Jason Kenney, back when he was cool when Stephen Harper was in charge, by the way, the Conservative Party is actually dead after Stephen Harper left, back in 2009, cut $1 million in annual funding to the group because there are a bunch of insert blank here. Kenney provided the group's leadership, Kenney proved the group's leadership repeatedly expressed support for terrorist groups Hamas and Hezbollah. They did. Big fans of the terrorist groups Hamas and Hezbollah, the CAF. In cutting funding to funding, Kenney's office noted CAF executives took part in Cairo conference together with Hamas and Hezbollah delegates, and likewise that the Hezbollah flag was flown at the CAF rally. The 2014 federal court ruling to uphold the suspension of funding included evidence showing CAF rallies compared Israel to Nazis and included a sign threatening to murder a Jewish child. Classic Palestinian human rights. The human rights of Palestinians to murder Jewish kids is the most fundamental right of all times. The group also sponsored an essay contest on the topic of ethnic cleansing in Israel, the only country where ethnic cleansing indicates that the Palestinian population increases dramatically. The population is actually growing there faster than it is anywhere else in the world. Worst ethnic cleansing ever, but who cares about facts when you got Omar al-Ghabra? Quote, I've been on public record disagreeing with the approach by the current administration of the Canadian Arab Federation, Albrada claimed in August amid the decision to continue cutting the funding. This is only what he said after he got into office. We'll go into his past. But Kenney told the National Post that while Albrada didn't lead the group in 2009, when he cut funding from it, the MP criticized my decision to cut it. So he was against cutting. I don't agree with the CAF and what they say, but with this. Okay. So Canadian journalist Ezra Levant warned in the Toronto Sun op-ed back in 2014 that al-Ghabra's close ties with Trudeau should be a warning sign. Omar al-Ghabra, the Saudi-born extremist who used to run the anti-Semitic Canadian Arab Federation, that group the lobby group that claims that Hamas and Hezbollah are not terrorist groups. Daniel in-point here. Hamas and Hezbollah, at the time that Omar al-Ghabra claimed they were not terrorist groups, in their charter, Hamas says that they want to hunt down and murder every Jew in the world, and leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, has said that he hopes every Jew moves to Israel so he doesn't have to hunt them down himself. Charming people, also death to America. Classic. Don't worry, they're just chanting death to America. Okay, normally in politics, al-Ghabra is someone you want to keep far away from, but Trudeau keeps al-Ghabra very close. He's been key to unlocking the anti-Israel vote and the anti-Semitic vote, the pro-Hamas vote, the pro-Sharia vote. We're going to get into Omar al-Ghabra's emphatic support of Sharia law soon. Al-Ghabra has extreme views, wrote Levant in the op-ed in 2013. He was president of the Canadian Arab Federation in 2004. He denounced Canada's largest newspaper chain, calling for using the term terrorist to describe the Muslim terrorist group like the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade of Fatah. He said it was mere opinion, not fact. No. The Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, their goal is to murder all the Jews to liberate the Al-Aqsa Mosque from the evil of the Jews. Fun fact, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is currently under the jurisdiction of the Islamic Wafd of Jordan. So the Islamic Wafd controls the Al-Aqsa Mosque, or the Temple Mount, whatever you want to call it, but we have an Al-Aqsa's Martyrs Brigade, which its goal is to kill as many Jews as possible, including children, blowing up school buses, to liberate that mosque from the control of the Jews. And by Jews, they mean the Islamic Wafd of Jordan. Welcome to Muslim Brotherhood propaganda. Okay, then there's a whole other thing on Israel, Zionism, and him just being anti-Israel, but we don't need that. Okay. My favorite Omar al-Ghabra moment was in 2006. In 2006, in Ontario, Ontario used to be a province in a country that used to be called Canada, there was a debate over whether to institute Sharia law and allow Sharia courts. I said no. Omar al-Ghabra said yes. Now, due to works of Canadian patriots and Muslims like Raheel Raza, Tariq Fatah, Tahir Gora, and a bunch of other sort of Muslims, they sort of spearheaded the pushback, because political correctness was a thing, but because of these Muslims, or as you'll find out, they're called Islamophobes on the list I'm on, they actually got about 70% of the Muslims in Ontario voted no to Sharia law. And it was because they were able to mobilize the Muslim community and say, like, no, we don't want that. We left that. We came here to Canada for a free, to be against Sharia law. It was because of them that the courts were stopped. Like, no one cared what all the whiteys had to say. It was them. So, great job to my homies there. But my favorite thing is Omar Al-Ghabra, after Ontario voted to not have Sharia law, and after the Muslim community, the majority of them, voted against Sharia courts, he excoriated the Muslim community specifically for not voting in Sharia law. He was very upset with the Ontario Muslim community for not wanting to institute Sharia law and turn Ontario into a caliphate. He is pro-Sharia. He is pro-Hamas. He is pro-Hezbollah. He is anti-Israel. He is Muslim Brotherhood. And now he's in cabinet. So, welcome to Justin Trudeau's Canada, I guess. What else is there to say? Now, we all know I'm of the belief that the Conservative Party has their own Al-Ghabra in insert name that can't be said because he's suing my family. But it's now there. Like, we have a cabinet minister in Canada that has openly supported terrorist groups, that has belittled and excoriated the Muslim community for not voting for Sharia law. We have someone in the Canadian cabinet who is pro-Sharia law openly, pro-terrorism openly. It's debatable. It's mere opinion in the Al-Aqsa Mosque Brigade. It's an opinion that they're not terrorists. Who knows? And I hate this. This is I always talk about how I hate things when people say, oh, things are so complicated. Kashmir is so complicated. Israel-Palestine so complicated. This is so complicated. That's just a term used by sort of media elites to sort of, I think it's to sort of suppress knowledge and sort of concentrate power within a technocratic elite and a political elite. I really hate it. So when people say is it really that complicated? If a group says about themselves that their goal is to murder as many Israeli citizens as possible to bring apart a caliphate, right? If they're openly fine with murdering children on a school bus, can we not call them terrorists? This is where it's oh, it's so complicated. It's so complicated. Is murdering all the Jews wrong? I don't know. It's so complicated. And there's things where we don't really do it for, like Nazis are bad. Is that complicated? Should Arnold Schwarzenegger's father have joined the SS? No. Is that a complicated thing? No, he shouldn't have done that. And with Arnold Schwarzenegger, it was like Kristallnacht, the storming of the Capitol was like Kristallnacht. Arnold, you should know what Kristallnacht was, because your father was an actual Nazi. It's ridiculous. All right. You know what, though? Canada, we may have the Liberal Party openly leaning into terrorism, but you know who's going to save us from terrorism? It's Erin O'Toole. So let's bring up this Toole-y tweet from the Toole himself. So this is an article from CTV News. Feds looking at declaring the Proud Boys a terrorist organization in the wake of the U.S. rioting. And this is Erin O'Toole's response. So just bring it up. I'll read you to it. Canada's Conservatives have consistently stood against terrorism. Terrorism and extremism wherever it's found and whatever its motivation. Okay there, buddy. All righty. Erin O'Toole, we will always support measures to keep Canadians safe from the threat of terror acts, including from any group motivated by white supremacy. Conservatives support the listing of various white supremacist groups as terrorist organizations. All right, so just show that on the thing so everyone knows I'm not a crazy person. All right. That's Erin O'Toole. Okay, so here, perfect. Keep that one on. Perfect. Thank you for this one. This is Erin O'Toole saying he's, wherever it's found, the motivation, wherever it's found, he's never going to be in a terrorist group. Here is Erin O'Toole having a meeting right after he becomes a leader with the Muslim Association of Canada. The Muslim Association of Canada, on their own website, until I did a video about him, as of 2019, said in their About Us section that they follow the teachings of the Muslim Brotherhood. They've been identified in Canadian Senate testimony as a front group of the Muslim Brotherhood, which you didn't really need because they say they're Muslim Brotherhood. And here he is, always standing against extremism. Here he is with a bunch of people who used to be in Mohammed Morsi's government, the actual Muslim Brotherhood. We got some other conservatives in there. Adam Ibrahim's in there. What a guy. Some other people are in there, but I don't have the money to fight 8,000 legal battles, but, you know. And yes, lawyers, you see this tweet and all the other things in the legal briefing. You don't even, if you can't read it on the screen, just go to section 12 point whatever and it's there. Okay. So Erin O'Toole's standing hard against the Proud Boys. Now, okay, I'll say what I always sort of say about the Proud Boys, because I remember when they were first started. I remember sort of talking to some of the people in the Toronto Proud Boys when it first became a thing, and it was like, okay, I get what you're kind of about here. And their whole thing was like Western chauvinism, right? They were talking about like, you know, the superiority of Western values. Now, they're having the right conversation in the wrong way was always my line about the Proud Boys. Like, yes, we should be having a conversation about values, but this is not how you do it, okay? And I obviously would never join the Proud Boys, and it was obviously going to devolve into something stupid, because when they say, you know, we have a group and this is what we're about, but we're all going to wear matching outfits, we're all going to wear the same, you know, polos that's going to have like yellow and black, and there'll be a symbol, it's going to devolve into something stupid. And it did. I remember a bunch of people leaving it, like they started like charging membership fees, and everyone's like, this is stupid. But like, I remember like a lot of the Toronto Proud Boys, like half of them were not white when it started. So it wasn't a racial thing when it started, so we always try and put them as like a white supremacist group. They're not, they're a Western supremacist group, but the Proud Boys is stupid. Like, the guys, don't join the Proud Boys, okay? If some group wants you all to wear matching outfits and go out onto the streets, it's not going to end well. Don't go in matching outfits and onto the streets. I'm not saying don't protest. You know, if you're in Quebec, go protest your dictator there. But guys, come on, matching outfits, seriously? So Erin O'Toole is so hard on the Proud Boys. He's going to declare them a terrorist organization. Meanwhile, he's meeting with the Muslim Brotherhood, who's totally fine. Almost every group listed in the Canadian Senate testimony as a Muslim Brotherhood front group, Erin O'Toole has met with. The only one he has not met with is AirFan, and the only reason he has not met with AirFan is because it actually doesn't exist anymore, because it got upgraded to actual terrorist group by the government of Canada. So it was disbanded. AirFan, though, which created something called the Reviving the Islamic Spirit Conference, which was a conference, you can now say, that was started by a terrorist organization in Canada. Guess who spoke there this year? Who was one of the speakers? Erin O'Toole was there. Doug Ford was there. And Garnet Genouy was also there, speaking at the Reviving the Islamist Spirit Conference. Such great speakers. It wasn't like last year we had Sirhaj Wahaj speaking at the RIS conference. And if you're thinking, is that the Sirhaj Wahaj who created all those terrorist training camps out in the United States where the kids died? No. That's actually Sirhaj Wahaj, Sirhaj Wahaj's son. Sirhaj Wahaj is the unindicted co-conspirator and character witness and good friend of the Blind Sheikh who blew up the World Trade Center the first time. So Sirhaj Wahaj, one of the founders of the ISNA, through terrorism funding violations in Canada, whoop-de-doo. He was one of the speakers last year. Now, there was some interesting controversy at the IS. I mean, I couldn't cover it this much this year because of the pandemic, whatever, but there was some controversy. The Grand Mufti of the UAE was not allowed to come. He was kicked out of the RS conference because he had made friends with the Jews. He said that the Jews were really people, and we cannot have Jews. But we're all about peace and tolerance. So that was a big controversy. Someone actually got banned from the Reviving the Islamic Spirit conference. It was not for terrorism. It was for befriending Jews. So this is the type of people Erin O'Toole likes to hang out with, but don't worry, he's consistently been against terrorism and extremism, no matter what the cause or the motivation, unless they can pay him money, in which case, you know what? Might as well take some money from the CCP, might as well take some money from the Muslim Brotherhood, might as well take money from this guy, that guy, and wherever. Oh my God, Erin O'Toole, what a G. So, this is what I've been saying. Like, Canada's Conservative Party is dead. The party of Stephen Harper is dead. And it's the same thing with what I said about Doug Ford. The Conservative Party is like 95% the Liberal Party now. And you know what? I'm just going to say some things. And do not infer anything. I'm just going to spitball some words. These words are utterly meaningless. Please don't sue me. So, fun fact, I'm just looking here on the internet, boop, 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 boop. And it turns out that a lot of the people on the executive boards and a lot of MPs on the Conservative Federal Party, the UCP Party, and the Ontario Provincial Party have been currently employed on the board or as lobbyists of something called Crestview Strategies. Interesting. So lots of people in the UCP board, the Conservative Federal Party board, and the Provincial Conservative board, and all the Conservative parties have at some points had links to Crestview Strategies. Interesting. Now, Crestview Strategies have 4 founders. Fun fact, 2 of the founders of Crestview Strategies are Katie Telford and her husband, Rob Silver. Wait, Katie Telford? That name sounds familiar. Is that the Katie Telford who's currently the chief of staff for Justin Trudeau? Yes, it is. Now, those words are completely unrelated. Those have nothing to do with anything. Bing bong. So whenever I go off on polling companies and why you should, if you want the Conservative Party to succeed, never give your money to the Conservative Party. Never, ever donate money to the Conservative Party. Because the Conservative Party will only use money you give it to shoot itself in the foot. And the way they do that is they contract different polling companies and strategy companies, companies like Crestview Strategies. And what they do is they pay them large sums of money to sort of run through different polls. But these polls are so fundamentally flawed. And I've gone over them before. Like, they ask leading questions. They ask, like, when they frame things about the carbon tax, they're like, are you in favor of curbing pollution? Yes or no? And then people are like, yeah, I want less pollution. Then it's like, there, 99% of Canadians support the carbon tax. And you're like, that's not how that question was asked. But this is how the Conservatives do research. And the way they do research is framed by Katie Telford. Katie Telford! And then they use that money to say, it looks like Katie Telford's firm wants us to be more left-wing. Wow! Whoa, what are the odds that the firm run by Justin Trudeau's chief of staff would tell the Conservative Party that they need to be more like the Liberals? Oh my, wow, who would have thought? Oh my God. You see why Canadian politics drives me insane. A little bit insane there. So yeah, that's probably another lawsuit coming from me. Well, who cares? This show is sponsored by me, Daniel Boardman. If you like me not being in legal purgatory, you can support me on Patreon or PayPal and pay my lawyers. This show also sponsored by my lawyers needing $325 an hour to keep me out of jail. Well, it's not even jail. It's to stop Erin O'Toole's lawsuit and his friend's lawsuit against me and my family. He just sued my family for no good reason. But, you know, he's against all different types of extremism. So people are like, I can't believe Erin O'Toole, he would deny doing interviews with rebel media. And, you know, why isn't Erin O'Toole speaking out against big tech censorship? Why is Erin O'Toole not in favor of alternative media, and why is he not speaking out against censorship? You mean the man who has a $2.5 million lawsuit against me and my family is pro-censorship and doesn't want alternative media because someone could then say, hey, look at all these people Erin O'Toole is associated with. Muslim Brotherhood sympathizer, carbon tax advocate, former liberal, kind of still a liberal, carbon tax advocate, okay, fake conservative, grifter, Crestview Strategies. You've been warned. Erin. All right, so civil war, America. Happening, not happening, who knows? What's the pathway to civil war here? I'm pretty worried about it. You asked me a couple years ago, I'd say no. Like, you know, I see the thing, but it looks like the Democrats either really want a civil war or just do not understand the right and are so ignorant of the other side and they're pushing lust for power that they just don't see a possibility of one happening and thus will foment one. And I think that's actually closest to the truth. Like, I don't think Twitter and the Democrats want a civil war. I don't think they do. I just think they're acting in a way that is indicative of people who've been living in a bubble for years and just do not understand the other side. So with Twitter and YouTube and big tech basically taking off Donald Trump, that's a sort of shot in the bow to say, like, hey, you know, this is censorship. And then, you know, you don't like Twitter, it's a private company. Build your own social media site. Parler. Oh, well, Amazon taking it down. Build your own web server, right? You do this, and the worry is, like, okay, we've all been driven insane because, you know, Black Lives Matter and Antifa could burn down the country for months on end, and this was, you know, all A-okay. Nancy Pelosi is encouraging this. Ayanna Pressley is encouraging this. Kamala Harris is financially encouraging this. all the Democrats are just like, rioting is the language of the unheard. One afternoon of Trump supporters, rioting into the Capitol, and all of a sudden saying, well, 93% of the people who went to the Trump rally were actually quite peaceful and didn't commit an insurrection. No. All wholesale. We must declare Trumpism a terrorism threat. And even the Canadian, Conservative Party, led by Erin O'Toole, starts talking about declaring different groups terrorist organizations, which is ridiculous, okay? I was the one who wrote the article on the potential downsides of declaring Antifa wholesale a terrorist organization from actual national security points of view. Okay, so I've been pretty measured on this. I made the case for and against Antifa being a terrorist organization. So I think I have some credibility to stand on here, at least some moral consistency. So I'm in parts encouraged and discouraged by what I see, because I still think the pathway to sort of reconciliation is there. But the Democrats have shown no will to sort of build coalitions. And they're driving people insane with their sort of fake outreach and fake, path building. Like, it's time for healing when you just agree we're all right. This most recent attempt to impeach Trump is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. He's leaving office on the 20th, right? It's less than a week. Just ride it out. But instead what they're doing is, on the way out, they're just sort of spitting on Republicans when they're not gracious in victory. And at some point in the last 4 years, I've never been a Trump is perfect guy. I've supported him when he's right. I've criticized him when he's wrong. I don't think he's the savior. I don't think any politician is the savior. And I've acknowledged that at points Trump has been immature. And Trump has been, a bombastic jackass, to put it bluntly. So I get it when, I have conversations and they say, Trump is so unprecedented. He's like a screaming toddler. Okay. At points, yeah. However, I would back the Democrats if over the last 4 years there were not two screaming toddlers in the room. And this has been the problem, though, is there have been two screaming toddlers in the room, and the media and sort of the political class and the establishment is having us pretend that there is only one, that they are the voice of reason when they are actually histrionic screaming toddlers. So however Trump was at his worst, that is equally as bad as the Democrats have been. And I think the best example of this, of just sort of the Trump derangement syndrome, is when Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer would not even vote to just symbolically back the movement for freedom in Iran, right? This is right after Iran had shot the protesters and said, hey, we don't just shoot them in the head, we're also shooting in the legs. And Trump wanted to say, hey, we condemn the murder of innocent people in Iran. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer said, no, we don't condemn the murder of innocent people in Iran because Trump says it's bad, so we think it's good. So that's when you lost all more legitimacy with me. And that was pretty indicative of the last 4 years in U.S. politics. There has never been an adult in the room that you could say, oh, yes, Trump has been a baby. Thank God we have the Democrats. When they're in power, it will be all calm again. No. It was equally as incoherent and histrionic as Trump was at his worst. So you're going to have a point where Twitter is going to censor people. They're going to take Parler off the Amazon services. Anything they're trying to wax up, it's going to get to the point where civil war should be triggered or will be triggered when it's not just the tech giants and the tech social media services. When the big financial companies say, we're going to stop processing the credit card payments of these companies. When you come at the money, and this is why if you're like a conservative, probably invest in cryptocurrency. If I had money, I'd put it in cryptocurrency right now, but, lawyer fees and whatever. Thanks, Erin O'Toole. It's when that point happens. So this is, again, a good reason to get gold. This is like the reason why gold and cryptocurrency go up is they're hedges against inflation. Gold does really well in times of uncertainty because it doesn't rely on the market. Like, the market gets a bit of uncertainty and currency fluctuates. So because there's more certainty in gold and then now cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, the value of it will go up. So if America becomes more and more unstable, the value of Bitcoin will go way up. Same with gold and silver. It's how the market works. I'm not a financial expert, but I know that much. So once that happens, you're going to have people. Now, the thing with the right versus the left, it's pretty negative. So you saw left-wing violence was sort of sporadic, spread out over months. Some of it was peaceful, some of it not. Burning down black-owned businesses, small businesses, looting a Target, looting a Walmart, vandalize synagogues, of course, because in order to fight Nazis, you got to destroy some synagogues. Welcome to Antifa. The way the right will take out its violence is they will actually go after who they perceive to be their enemies. It will be focused, right? They were mad at the government because they wanted to stop the steal. They stormed Capitol Hill. Twitter keeps censoring people and doing this. They're going to storm Twitter offices. JP Morgan Chase says we're not going to process the credit card payments of conservatives, and they go after the conservatives. They're going to go after JP Morgan Chase. So you kind of know what sectors will be hit. Now, I'm not saying this is good. It's not good. Violence is really bad. Now, this will be horrific because, of course, if you go and storm the offices of Twitter, you're not going to end up, when you perform your public executions on and get revenge on Twitter, most likely the Twitter people you're going to be executing and getting revenge on aren't actually the ones doing the censoring. They wouldn't be there. But, that's, it's not going to be hyper-focused. It's like targeted assassinations of whatever. It's going to be, sort of targeted mob violence that's not going to be so productive, let's say, to anyone's means. But, I know the right, and that's sort of what you're standing in the barrel of. So, how do you avoid that? That's the question, is how do you avoid that? And the answer is there needs to be some reconciliation in the country. And it is good that Biden wants to reconcile and heal America. But you have to realize, so I say, truth and reconciliation. There has to be some truth there. You can't say, we want reconciliation, so you must apologize to me and do what I say. There has to be a mea culpa from the Democrats. There has to be some, you know what? We're sorry about excuse the writing. There was some Trump derangement syndrome. We went a bit crazy too. You know what? As a show of good faith, we're gonna start a hammer Twitter as well. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden is gonna publicly support some conservatives who've been banned on Twitter. They're gonna actually publicly advocate for certain of their political opponents to be put back on Twitter for the heart and soul of America. That would be a good thing. That's how you lead to togetherness. Another thing the Democrats need to do, if the Democrats actually want to avoid a civil war, something you can do, it's very simple. If you want to regain credibility, you need to get rid of Adam Schiff, the head of the Russia Inquisition. You need to get rid of Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff, the liar who claimed he had seen the evidence that Donald Trump had colluded with Russia, and that truth proved to be untrue, the man who led America into insanity for years, a noted liar, right? He's still a hero among the Democrats. If you want some healing from the Republicans, get rid of Adam Schiff. Just say, hey, he lied, Russia was not a thing, and we think he needs to step down. He's being pushed out. He is a symbol of divisiveness. We're pushing out Adam Schiff as a symbol of good faith, right? That way, it kind of puts the onus on Republicans to sort of tamp down their rhetoric, maybe get rid of their bad actors. But until you do that, if you play this game that all the bad things that happened in America the last 4 years were all the fault of Donald Trump and all the fault of the conservatives, well, you're not going to get anything because, no, you're not going to get Republicans to say, well, yes, everything was my fault and now we'll just be Democrats now. No need to even have any more elections because we're all Democrats now. We're all so sorry about Donald Trump. So let's just every House, Senate, chamber, everything should just be Democrat run, mea culpa. And it is salvageable because, well, the media and the elites are driving us insane. I finally had the conversation with the family. We did the debate last week on the Zoom, and I thought it'd go really poorly. It actually went really well. And this is why I always say I hate when people say you shouldn't talk about religion and politics at dinner time, because if you can't talk about these issues with the people you love and who love you in a way that is productive, well, then no one's ever going to have conversations about these issues unless they're in an echo chamber that they know is absolutely going to agree with them. And yes, at points it got a bit heated, and my family kind of disagreed with me on a lot of things. I disagree with them, but I think we all came out better for it, and no one's getting disowned. So now, this requires, if you're going to have these conversations, you to not be attacking people. Listen to your liberal members of your family, try and hear them out. You get out what you put in, sort of. So if you expect them to be reasonable, listen to you, and you expect them vice versa, it will come. And this is really the only way forward, is to start talking again. And if the longer we say, oh, you can't talk about politics at the dinner table, well, then if no one's going to talk, then they're going to start shooting at each other, and that's just where we're going to get to. And we do not want to get there. All right, so next story. You know who I love? Well, Justin Trudeau. And you know who Justin Trudeau loves? The Communist People's Party of the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP. Now, there's a lot to love about the Communist Party of China. One, their basic dictatorship, which Justin Trudeau does love. Two, the concentration camps for Muslims. That's another thing. They're also horribly oppressing Jews and Christians too, but that gets less play. Granted, the systemic concentration camps for the Muslims is the most ridiculous thing that China is doing. What else is to love about China as a Canadian? Oh, they've kidnapped two Michaels, Michael Covert and Michael Spavrik, and I'm holding them in detention centers, basically in a locked, dim room where they're not allowed even out for the day. They've been basically kept in solitary confinement for 2 straight years. Oh, I love that. And who also? The telecom company Huawei. What a great company. Huawei P30X, the new sponsor of this show. You need to take a picture of a Muslim in a concentration camp? A Huawei P30S 8G2. You need to film the systemic rape of Muslim Uyghur women? Do it on your Huawei phone. Huawei, proud sponsor of human rights abuses everywhere. Disney's Mulan. Okay. So 2 special visas were granted by Justin Trudeau for the family of Meng Wanzhou, the Huawei executive currently under arrest for sanctions busting. Has Michael Covert and Michael Spavrik even been allowed out of their cells in the last 2 years? Yet we're granting special travel visas for Meng Wanzhou's family at a time where it's a friggin' pandemic, where no one's allowed to travel. But we're making special exemptions for high-ranking communist friggin' Chinese officials so they can visit Meng Wanzhou. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I want to drive my head through a wall. And I want that wall to be Parliament. You know what? I don't need to explain this anymore. I'm not going to insult your intelligence. You know why this is bad. You know why this is ridiculous. Shake your fist with me. Let's give it a good fist shake. Let's end on some good news. So good news. We talked about the Abrahamic Accords and the peace deals Trump had negotiated. At least one of them, the UAE and Israel, this is now permanent. It is the UAE and Israel have now instituted visa-free travel between the two countries. That's it. It's over. The freeze between these two countries, whatever it was, they are now full-on normalized allies. It took less than a year, but there is real lasting peace. Earlier, the UAE actually united a Yemeni family that had been separated for decades, a Jewish Yemeni family. By the way, Hitler, he got his idea for putting the yellow stars on Jews. That comes from the Sharia law. The yellow star was actually what the Yemenis did to their Jews in the 1800s and 1900s. They would put yellow stars on the Jews. And Hitler was like, he met his good friend, Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj al-Husseini, and he learned from them how to treat the Jews. And that's actually where that came from. Yemen being one of the most horrible places for Jewish people historically. So the UAE did a great to sort of right that wrong and united a Yemeni Jewish family. It was a very touching movement, scene. And the UAE is actually committed to world peace here. They're committed to joining, not becoming Western, maintain their own culture, but sort of joining the West and the democratic nations as being a legitimate, peaceful, modern society. And that is a great thing. They will, having free trade and movement with Israel is great for them. It's sort of the perfect economy for them to work with, because Israel is a very high-tech economy, and what Israel does really, really well is create startups. Like, most of the stuff in your smartphone is like Israeli-made Waze, most of the apps. So what they do is a lot of these Israeli tech startups, they start up, they get big, and they sort of sell that infrastructure to sort of other countries with lots of money, right? They go and then those countries run it, and then they create another tech company and start it, and then it sells to the rest of the world. This works great with the UAE, which has like tons and tons of money, but doesn't have that sort of tech infrastructure. So, the ability to sort of, be supplemented with sort of Israeli tech startup companies, and then have an economy that sort of, the UAE doesn't have the sort of on-the-ground ability to start up tech companies, but has the infrastructure to run successful companies once they're built. This will be really good for them. It will help modernize them technologically, socially. I think it's really, really good for both countries. It's a really good sign that it looks like the peace deals that Trump negotiated will actually last. They are not just we both hate Iran deals. They are legitimate, like, hey, let's be friends. And I think that's good because peace is good. War is not as good. So there's your good news for the week. Ending on that. Remember that, don't worry, guys. Whatever wrong is happening, Erin O'Toole will save us. Just pray to the great Lord, Erin O'Toole, because you know what? He takes extremism and terrorism very seriously. And I'll see you next week unless Erin O'Toole has me arrested for something. Goodbye.